The summer movie season is officially winding down, and as we close out the month of August, director Fede Alvarez has brought the Xenomorph back to the big screen for the first time in 7 years. This time around, we focus on Cailee Spaeney's reign, as she and some other fellow colonists make their way to an abandoned ship in the hopes of securing a better life for themselves. And when they get there, nothing goes wrong, and everyone turns out completely fine. Yeah, not really. The trailers for Romulus have been pretty exciting. Not only did the cinematography look promising, but they seem to recapture that sense of horror that was present in the first film. And Fede Alvarez has talked about how he was trying to harken back to that film, as well as its sequel. Which makes sense, as those are two A-plus masterpieces in their respective genres. It's clear that he has a passion for the series, and that this was not going to be a half-ass attempt to cobble something together last minute. Now, the Alien franchise on a whole is actually pretty interesting when it comes to the uniqueness of its different installments. Obviously, you have the first two, which were trailblazers for the sci-fi, horror, and action genres, but then you also have this nihilistic meditation on death and faith that was Alien 3. I really dug that movie upon revisiting it for my review. And that's a good video, by the way, you should check that out. Then you have Resurrections, which was a misfire, two crap studio crossover projects, and most recently Ridley Scott's prequels. Now, I personally think that an unnecessary amount of hate has been thrown at those projects. While they were plagued by script issues and stock characters, I think both Prometheus and Covenant were quite audacious in their ambitions. Ridley Scott infused no shortage of jaw-dropping visuals, interesting ideas, and heady sci-fi themes that made me really appreciate those films for what they were. Thus, we finally arrive at Alien Romulus, and with Alvarez's creative direction along with Ridley Scott's support as a producer, the franchise aims to return the series back to the basics, and you can rest assured, there will be no spoilers here. I get pretty ticked off at YouTubers who use the spoiler-free banner on their videos, and yet they spill the beans about crucial elements almost immediately. You do not have to worry about that with this video. And I'll just come right out and say it, I enjoyed this movie. Quite a bit, actually. This was the first time I went to an IMAX theater in Wisconsin, and I am so glad that I did. Romulus is a film that you need to watch on the big screen. It's an impressive technical marvel, in addition to being an effective horror film. The cast here is solid. Cailee Spaeney, aka my future wife, is continuing to impress with the projects that she's taken on. She's starring in 2 big movies this year alone, and I feel like she's only going to get bigger. This isn't a character who has the most dialogue, but from the very start, you clearly know her character Rain's motivations. And Spaeney gives a great physical performance the more she's put through the ringer over the course of the story. But the absolute standout in terms of acting is David Johnson's character Andy. He has a particular connection with Rain that I thought gave the movie its emotional center, and the changes he undergoes throughout the progression of Romulus gave an additional undercurrent of tension aside from the aliens themselves. That kind of a performance is tough to swing, but I thought Johnson knocked it out of the park. Expect to see him pop up in more things to come. And on the whole, I thought this entire crew was pretty well developed for what they had to work with. Obviously, this is an alien film, and from the trailers you get a certain expectation of what's going to happen to these colonists. But even the stereotypical jerk character has a reason for why he's acting that way. And these sort of personal experiences help to further build out the world that these people are living in. The focus on this crew helped to solidify the themes of the movie. Themes of the poor and underprivileged working through the toils of a corporate authoritarian regime. These are themes that are very much present from the start of the franchise, and I thought that Alvarez did a great job of bringing them to the forefront. So when I hear complaints that this movie is not about anything, I can't help but roll my eyes. Apparently this was originally supposed to go straight to streaming, much like Prey did, another good movie by the way. But I am so glad this was released on the big screen instead, because this is easily the best looking blockbuster I've seen of the entire year. I'd recommend watching Romulus for its production value alone, as the visuals, set design, and even the sound design are all on point. And there were a surprising amount of practical effects that were used. The hallways were real, and the creatures looked so tangible. The fact that this film only cost $80 million absolutely blows my mind, whereas other blockbusters these days have more than double the budget and look like cheap Super Bowl commercials. And it brought back that dingy aesthetic that defines the franchise to me. While Prometheus and Covenant had their share of great visuals, I always found the ships too clean looking. When I think of Alien, I think of dirty, out-of-commission hallways. If it looks like I can eat off of the floor of the ship in your movie, then that movie's not Alien to me. Now let's talk about the alien itself. This is the scariest the xenomorph has been since the first one. At this point, general audience members know this creature like the back of their hands. It's hard to find anything shocking or surprising about them at this point, but they're done in a way that felt fresh here. And when you actually go back and revisit Alien, you see that they did a lot to keep the creature hidden in the shadows. And Alvarez does the same thing with Romulus. You don't see a xenomorph every 10 seconds, but when you do see one, it matters. The tension around them was so well done. At least, it was in the beginning. By the end, the characters are just blasting these things, which sort of lessens their impact, but then again, you could say the same thing about Alien, so it's fine, I guess. And there were sequences in Romulus that had me gripping my seat, genuinely. I don't do that a lot these days. And they were done in a way that felt natural to the story, not in a, oh, it would be cool if we just threw this in kind of way. This is a space horror through and through, and it makes great use of its environments. Some of these things you're going to see in the movie and think to yourself, huh, I'm surprised they've never done this before in an Alien film. Romulus itself is tying together concepts from the previous installments into its core story, to mixed effect. Obviously, this works mainly as a bridge between 1 and 2, but I was surprised at the allusions it made to the other films. I'm really tiptoeing around this discussion to avoid spoiling it, but needless to say, there are things that were done in this film that were improved ideas from the past, and it all coalesces into this one narrative that by its third act had me completely floored. It was refreshing to see this kind of a risk being implemented by the filmmakers, and it paid off. What didn't pay off as well were the times where Romulus felt the need to shamelessly lift entire elements from the past. Because this thing is at its absolute worst when it is directly pulling from things we've already seen before. I was like, no, Fetty, you were doing so good up until this point. Because when you are taking specific quotes without any context and digitally recreating elements from the past for the express purpose of member berries, it just comes off as lazy. Especially when the effects were looking so good. I'm not sure if that stuff was a studio mandate from Disney, request from Ridley Scott, or Alvarez just trying to pay tribute to the past. But whatever the reason may be, it just didn't work for me, and it dragged the quality of the film down quite a bit. So no, Romulus wasn't perfect, but I thought it was great. I'd want to rewatch it a few more times to confirm this, but I'd say at this point it's my third favorite of the series. I just can't understand all these people I see calling this the worst Alien movie of all time. Like, did you watch AVP Requiem? I imagine that Romulus is going to go through the same life cycle that almost every other Alien movie went through. It comes out, people hate it, video essays drop on YouTube about it, and then people will look back on it more fondly as newer films come out to compare it to. Rinse and repeat. It's kinda tiring at this point. Romulus was a perfect return to the basics for the horror franchise that was Alien. It sets it on the correct course, and I'm excited for the stuff to come. It was an exceptionally well-made sci-fi thriller that had characters who were more fleshed out than I thought they would be, fantastic production design, genuine thrills, and a number of sequences that had me hooked to the screen. I just can't call that a bad movie. It's actually a pretty awesome movie. So in the end, I'm gonna give Alien Romulus a B+.